What is going on? Why is it doing that? Have you ever heard of the game called Sugar Sugar? It was a fun puzzle game that I used to play where you had to draw lines to direct sugar grains into cups. And I decided for my next project, I wanted to make a game like it. So to get started, we need to figure out how to draw a line with the mouse and have physics objects be able to interact with it. And right out of the gate, I had no idea how to do that. Enter in ChatGPT. I definitely had him help me a little bit with this script. I definitely don't like to have AI do everything for me, but in situations where I don't know what I'm doing, if ChatGPT can teach me something, I'm alright with that. So pretty quickly, ChatGPT and I had a working drawing mechanic that worked pretty much just like I intended it to. The only problem now was that the physics of the cubes I've made are not accurate, but we'll work on that later. The next thing I did was add a mug to test dropping things into. And it's early, but it's already starting to feel like sugar sugar. The first problem with these cubes is that they're not falling at a fixed rate. As you can see here, they're gaining distance from each other as they go down. So I made it so they fall down at a fixed rate rather than basing it off of actual gravity. But now they were too far apart. So I brought them closer together, and it's a little messy, but it's getting closer to what I'm looking for. As you see here, it also gets pretty glitchy, and this is looking a little bit better. But they were getting stuck a lot, so I decided to change their collider to circles instead of squares. And they work a lot smoother now, but it does look a little silly having the squares rotate like that. It was time to pick a theme that was different than sugar, and I decided to go with falling sand, which is actually what I'm thinking of calling this project. I looked up what sand grains look like up close, and here's my attempt at drawing. Pretty great, I know. So I slapped that into Godot and I put the collider on. And all of a sudden, look at that. It's interesting. I didn't like the way that they were colliding, so I made the collider smaller. Now it looks like they kind of grouped together a little bit better. And clearly they were too big, so I made them a lot smaller. And now it's looking like sand. And it works exactly like I expect it to, 100% of the time. For real though, I honestly have no idea why it was doing this. It was working fine, and then all of a sudden it would just start throwing pieces off to the side in a weird floaty way, and then it would start falling normally again. It was really weird, but I fixed it somehow, and now it's in the past. So now I started making it to where the individual grains of sand would kind of sway back and forth as they fell, and I had to play around with the settings until it felt just right. But pretty much here's where it started looking like how I wanted it to. But adding this functionality introduced a new problem. As you can see here, when the sand is on a platform, it's wiggling constantly and it looks weird. Let's go see how we fixed this. I sent out a raycast from each grain of sand and got the collider that it collided with. I checked if the collider was not itself, and if so, I would set is on ground to true, else set it to false. And if it is on the ground, I would set its horizontal velocity to 0, so it wouldn't wiggle anymore. As you can see here, as it piles up, it acts a lot more like you would expect it to. And here we have the sand mechanic working pretty much perfectly. Next was to change the placeholder mugs I made for something a little more thematic. I'm using this temporary sprite for a sandcastle mold just to fit the theme, and I added a number to it that goes down 1 for each grain of sand that enters it. And over here on the right, you can see that I can set the amount of grains needed per cup, so that I can have varied amounts depending on the puzzle I'm doing. Over here, you can also see with the spawner, I can decide how many grains of sand come out and at what time interval in between each grain, so that I could have interesting puzzles like this. I then made it so that the sand grains had a random rotation at start, but you really can't notice it. It was just something that I wanted to do. Next, I started working on a fan, which, as you can see here, blows the sand when it gets in there. I thought this could add some really great puzzle ideas. And of course, I can adjust the strength of the fan. I left it running for a while, and clearly there's a lag issue here, but I don't think this is going to be a problem. Next, I started learning about themes, which basically makes it where you can set up a button one time and every button you make thereafter looks the same. Here you can see a temporary menu where I have a settings menu and a play menu, and here's the level select menu with levels 1 through 20, and you see it works when I clicked on level 1. For some reason the mouse was hidden, I don't know why. It comes back near the end of the video, but my recording software apparently didn't want to pick it up. I made it so the level select locks progression, and you have to beat the levels one by one. I started this by, as you can see here, changing the scene based off of a variable that you would set on each button. but I decided that I just needed to use the text of the button since they're the same as the actual level names anyway. Next, we needed to add a victory condition so you could actually win. So I did this by adding a signal to an auto load. In the victory condition script, I had a variable for the number of cups needed to fill and a variable for how many were filled. In the ready function, I connect to that signal we made in the auto load. And then for every cup that is filled, we add one to the cups filled variable and check to see if it's equal to the number of cups needed to win. And if so, you win. So as you can see here, as soon as the cup reaches 0, the next level button pops up, and then you can go to the next level. Next, I drew my own restart arrow and threw that into a button. And then as you can see here, I put it into the level, and if you make a mistake, you can press the button and restart the level no problem. I then did the same for a home button and put them both together in a mini menu and put those up at the top right of each level. And now you can restart the level or just go straight home. I then added a title to the main menu as well as some falling sand behind everything, which I thought was kind of fun. Though adding so many things at once can be pretty laggy. So I made it to where if the grains of sand left the screen, they would just be destroyed. After that, I found this really awesome Godot asset called Simple GUI Transitions. And you can see here it working with the menu and then also the level select screen. I then added a temporary nozzle for the sand to come out of instead of just falling from nowhere, and also added a ceiling. It doesn't look great, but it works. Next, I wanted to add a new thing that I like to call the no draw zone, which does basically exactly what you'd expect it to. But I was having a problem where it wouldn't register the mouse going in and out. As you can see here, it is doing it, but it was really hard to get it to do that for some reason. But I discovered that with control nodes, they have a filter for mouse passing, and I had to set that to ignore on every one in each level for it to actually work. But now you can see here, if I draw from outside and go into, it'll stop it. And if I start from inside, I can't draw. One problem is though, if you go fast enough, you can go through it, but I'm not really gonna bother with that right now. The next problem we had was with the fans. As you can see here, if you were to draw a line, the fan would blow the sand grains straight through it. And that's a problem because I wanted to make ramps with it like this, and it just doesn't work. This is what is commonly referred to as the bullet through paper problem. And here's basically my understanding of how it works. You have a wall here, and over here on the left, you have a bullet moving to the right. You would expect it to just fly straight to it and collide with the wall as you want it to. But that's not exactly how the physics work. How it really works is the bullet checks a certain distance in front of it and checks to see if at the end of that point, it's colliding with something. If not, it skips ahead. It keeps doing this until you get to the wall, it checks and says, hey, the end of the line is not colliding with anything, so move right through it. And then it just keeps on going. So how do we fix this problem? Well, one easy solution is to simply make the wall bigger so that the bullet cannot see through it. But I don't want to do that because I want my lines to be thin. So here's how the sand blowing function works in my game. It gets a direction 1 or -1 for left or right, and a force, which I've been using 350. If it's not blowing, you set it to true, and then set the direction and force equal to the passed in variables. Otherwise, set the blowing to false, and set the momentum to the force times the direction. The problem is that the sand is traveling too fast, but if I slow it down, then it won't blow as far as I want it to. So my solution was to change the fall speed while it's blowing to half of its normal speed, and then change it back when it's not. This allows me to reduce the force by a lot, in this case to 100. And as you can see here, it still blows just about as far as it normally did. And now it doesn't go through the platform. And it's working just as I wanted. Now the real test is doing a flat wall, and it performed pretty well. Though, as you can see here at the end, one did make it through. Hey, future Godot bro here. As I was editing this video, I realized that Godot has a function called Set Continuous Collision Detection Mode. And if you pass a 1 in there, it basically does exactly what I was trying to fix all by itself. And the fan is set to 600 here and it still works perfectly. So yeah, that was a bit of wasted time, but hey, I learned something new and I consider that a victory. Next, I added a title to the main menu and reduced the amount of sand falling. I then made it so that all the levels except for the first one are locked until you beat the previous one. I added text at the bottom of each level, letting you know which level it is. Level 1 here, it just introduces the drawing mode. Level 2 adds a second cup. Level 3 adds a third cup, but it does it in a way that's a little more tricky. Level 4 introduces the fans. Level 5 is a little bit more challenging because you have to time it just right to split the sand. Level 6 shows you that you can use the fan to blow the sand up a ramp. Level 7 introduces the no draw zone. It's a pretty simple solution, but it's just getting the concept across. Level 8 is basically the same, but you can't draw close to the cups, so you have to drop it at the right spot. Level 9 is a bit of a combination of all that stuff, and it's really interesting because you are forced to draw a flat wall. And level 10 is similar to level 8, except you have to drop it from a further distance. I almost messed it up on this try, but I ended up getting it. And there's only 10 levels right now, so when you click next level, it just takes you back to the main menu. So that's it for this first devlog. I have some ideas for future additions, like perhaps moving platforms, movable fans, and maybe even some traps. If you have any suggestions for additional things I could add or some level design ideas, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, and have a good day.